First of all, my opinion is there's no such thing as a free lead. Like everything either costs time or money, no matter where you're getting it. There's no such thing as a free lead.
It's funny, it's really rare that I get the privilege of talking to someone who also knows digital marketing really well, but that's how I got my start in real estate. And so when I talked to Josh, our guest today, and discovered that, his initial start into the world of sales and marketing and real estate was also Google Ads, I was excited to chat with you. But fast forward all these years, Josh is the managing broker at my brokerage in South Dakota and is just growing something really interesting and unique. But what I find most interesting is that you actually looked at your numbers after using many different paid lead sources and realized that you were not happy with the results you were getting and something needed to change. And that is a message that I've been telling agents who buy leads for years. So I'm happy to have you on the show today. And I really can't wait to see kind of where our conversation goes. So Josh Ries, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very much, Matt, for having me. Super excited about doing this one and seeing where it goes.
So I just want to dive right into this. So you told me a story. And by the way, you're one of the most interesting agents that I've talked to in a while, mainly because you survived a bomb explosion, but we'll get to that later. But I want to hear from you your kind of story of you and your wife were doing the real estate thing. She was full-time, you were part-time, but you were kind of managing the data and the numbers. And you guys had an epiphany where you guys had a great year. You closed a bunch of deals. You were busy. If you looked at your calendar, everyone would realize that you were busy, but you fell victim to what I call the smoke and mirrors game that so many realtors, lenders, and salespeople fall into, where you were busy, you had great numbers, but you were broke. You weren't broke, but you weren't making any money in real estate. And I just want to hear that story from you and what it looked like, what was the setup, and what epiphany did it leave you with, and then what did you change? And I think honestly, that's the whole show today, because that is something that a lot of agents need to hear.
Yeah, so I got into real estate about 2016. Took me about 2 years. Like you said, I had a digital marketing background. My wife had been in real estate prior to me. She kind of had coaxed me into real estate as a plan B, and I think we'll talk about kind of that later. But basically what happened is 2018 rolled around. Our brokerage did the end of the year party award ceremony thing. We went out, got a bunch of brokerage awards, production awards. The next morning I wake up and I'm looking at our bank account and I'm going, wait a second. We got all these awards last night. We were touted as these top producers within our brokerage. But looking at my bank account, I was like, I don't really feel like a top producer. I feel like I'm just barely making it every month just to pay the lead generation bills. And ultimately what we had fallen into is the trap that a lot of people have, where we were at a good brokerage, but they didn't really teach us the business math side of everything. And so we were paying a lot of third-party lead generation companies, but not paying close enough attention to our cost per lead, our cost per acquisition. And so what was happening is we were closing deals, we were not very profitable. And then basically at the end of the month, we had enough money to pay the lead generation bills for the next month. And so we were just kind of on this cycle of, continually spending money just to make enough to get by for the next month. But we really weren't making anything where we could actually scale the business and grow it. We were just super stagnant. And so I kind of, my background in digital marketing and business, I really took a hard look at our numbers, which is funny because we'd been in business at this point, or I'd been in the business for 2 years. My wife had been in, and we'd never done this before. And it was something that people just didn't talk about in real estate where we were at. And so what we really realized is we were just spending way too much money to get each transaction to the closing table. And so we close when we get a big check, but ultimately half of the money just went right back out the door on other things. And so we really kind of ripped apart the whole entire business. I brought into, my lead generation background, my digital marketing background to design our own Google systems, meta systems, all that type of stuff. And basically in 2 years, we were about able to cut our cost per acquisition on clients by almost 80%. I think we got to 78.8. I wish we would have got to 80, but so all of a sudden it was wait a second, this was so much better because not only were we more profitable, We didn't have to grind as hard to make the same amount of money. And if we did want to grind hard, we actually had money that then we could use to scale the business and grow in the way that we wanted to.
So this kind of brings me to my first like moment that I have to share with all realtors. It's one of the biggest scams in our industry. And it's that though a lot of agents started on a team and they see that their leads come from these sources, like these big lead gen sources. But every single time I do an analysis for one of my like loan officers or realtors of like, hey, what do you think about this lead source? I'm like, this is just Google ads that a company is selling you at triple the cost. Like
Yeah.
that's all. Like this company does Google ads and they charge you 3 to 4 times the cost. And you're immediately starting off with like a really bad set of numbers. And then
Yeah.
if it's not that option, it's an option where it's a company that gives you a lead. And if you close it, you pay back 30 or 40%. And
Yeah.
then God forbid you're on a team and there's another person taking a cut and your broker's taking a cut. And all of a sudden after you've paid for gas, you're not making money. And at
Yeah.
the end of the day, like you said it best, like that story of like being at a company event and getting all these awards and admiration from all these other agents who are probably freaking jealous of you. But then to see that bank account number the next day, that is what so many people feel on a daily basis. And I think it's honestly probably the biggest scam in our industry. I mean, there's a guy in the market next door to me who it looks like he does, probably $1 million to $1.2 million in commission a year, but he has 17 people on the team. They use Zillow, they use Boomtown, they use Follow Up Boss, they use like all these systems. And I'm like, that costs money. And at the end of the
Yeah.
day, like I think he's making like $130,000 a year to work like 70 hours a week. And
Yeah.
I think like that's not the business that a lot of us signed up for, right? Like you get into real estate because you want to control your schedule, that you want freedom. And I think a lot of us ended up being trapped in credit card debt and in weird situations. So I want to know,
Yeah.
like, what were the actual steps you took to get your cost per closing down? And first of all, anyone listening, if you're looking for that, like first take home moment today, figure out your cost per closing. And there's no judgment whether you buy leads or whether you get them from a builder or some other source. Every agent and salesperson needs to know what their cost per lead is and what their cost per closing is. And if you don't know those two things, that's my first assignment. But Josh, how did you get those numbers down? Because that's what I want to hear.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that we did, and I think it needs to go what you just said, is understanding those numbers. And I think one of the biggest issues we have in this industry is you fall in two camps. Either you can never buy leads or you should only buy leads. And we like to talk in absolutes. And so a lot of times I'll talk to these people that will say, oh, you can't buy leads and be successful. And first of all, my opinion is there's no such thing as a free lead. Like everything either costs time or money, no matter where you're getting it. There's no such thing as a free lead. And so I think we're doing a big disservice to agents by just talking in absolutes because we're not teaching them the business math of understanding if you should buy leads or not buy leads, and understanding that because there's no such thing as a free lead, even if you're going out and getting free leads that are super inefficient, like for example, you mentioned referral-based services, like you can not really scale a successful business on referral leads at 40, 35, 40%. It's almost impossible. So the first thing is know your numbers. For us, that was our first thing. We stripped everything down. That we started at a real granular level. And so we started looking at what is it costing us to get each lead into our database. And then once we had that, okay, so we knew it was costing X amount to get top of funnel leads. And then, so that was our cost per lead. And then we looked at what does it cost us to get them down the funnel to the closing table. And that's where, the Boomtown, the Follow Up Boss, all those other systems that we had in place. What a lot of agents don't realize is, it might be $100 a month, $200 a month. But especially if you're a solo agent and you're only closing, 1 or 2 deals a month, each one of those things are hitting your profit. And so really understanding, of those things that you're paying for to nurture people down the pipeline, because we know like the average consumer in real estate comes in and they're a long time in your pipeline most of the time. So you have a lot of money that you're putting to get those people to the closing table. And what we found is for us, a lot of those things we were paying for, we weren't even using. And so that was the next step for us is once we identified our cost per lead and what it cost us to get people to the closing table, it was really looking at those things. How could we eliminate if we weren't using them, or, could we downgrade our subscription or do whatever we could to be more profitable with those things. And ultimately, it was really for us, we had a ton of stuff that we were paying for every month that weren't even doing us any good when it came to actually getting people to the closing table. And so that was a big part for us, is let's get rid of those things so that when we get somebody to the closing table, we're keeping more of that money in our pocket.
So let's just break it back down to the very beginning. Like where once you cut out some of the systems that were just too expensive, where were the new leads coming from? Like what were you doing to get the leads into the top of the funnel in the first place?
So before the switch, we were using Zillow Premier Agent. So we had a couple zip codes. And then we were also using Realtor.com. We were using a couple pay at closing lead generation services. I can't think of them. Homelight, or I think they're gone now. We were using them. So, and then we had a whole bunch of other like agencies too that we were paying, which is hilarious because me with my Google background, I fell into that trap. Like these people were just giving me Google leads, and I didn't even realize, like, I didn't even think about it. Like I could do this for way cheaper on my own, but I just, you just buy real estate leads because that's what your brokerage says. And so, those were kind of our big ones, but our biggest ones were Zillow and Realtor.com.
Okay. And what about after you made the switch?
So after we made the switch, we had gone all to our own running Google paid ads to bring people in top of the funnel, and then really working on organic marketing, social media. The cool thing is, by the time we made that switch, we really had a pretty big sphere. So a lot of it when we made the switch was, how do we leverage our sphere to get more referrals and get more business out of this database that we already have.
I love
so that. We were kind of fortunate in that regard.
And we kind of did the same thing. I mean, we looked at like our business and where our leads were coming from, and we're 80% organic, referral, repeat, past client, things of that nature. But we do like to generate new business, especially in markets that we don't have a presence. And so we, in essence, like, and this advice would work for anyone listening, I believe, is we took a list of the very specific keywords that we knew if someone searches for this, we truly are the best possible fit for them. So we looked at like rural development lender, Grand Rapids, Michigan, and said, okay, we are going to put so much content on our website, on YouTube, and on social media about this topic that anytime someone Googles it, we pop up. And then we know, because our reviews say that we're the best, we have all the products, we have the right calls to action, the right coupons, the right everything. We know we're going to get leads off of this. And so we invested our time and, in theory, our money, because it was our staff, into making that content and then making sure that we could convert that content. And so we know that for every blog we put up that takes us, $200 in staff time, we should get 1,000 hits over the course of the year. And out of that 1,000 hits, we're going to convert 1 to 4% of that traffic into a lead. And then from that, we're going to convert a certain percentage, usually 8% of all of our leads, into closings. And so we have our numbers very dialed down on what that leads to. And for most realtors, it's just figuring out, like, what do you want to be found for? Is it best realtor for lakefront homes in XYZ area? Or is it best realtor for investment properties, or best female realtor, or best something? And then just buy each one of those for $8 a click, $50 a click. You just have to know your market. If you're in Miami, $100 a click sounds great if you're getting $1 million competitions. If you're in rural Michigan or South Dakota, it's probably $2 a click. And you have to look at your competition.
Yeah, well, I think one thing you said too is that we really found in that process, because after we kind of identified, okay, the cost per acquisition, get the business math now down so we know the numbers. Our next step was, okay, let's look at the conversion rate and how do we convert more? And so one thing that we really found too, and you just hit on this, is the relevance and continuity, so that your ads, if you're running homes for sale in, let's say for me, it was homes for sale in Portland, Oregon, when we started this. Are you sending people to a landing page that are homes for sale in Portland, Oregon? Because a lot of times, even a lot of these big companies, they'll run you to a landing page that has no relevance to the keywords that they clicked on. And so for us, that was part of the way that we optimized our campaigns too, to get a better cost per click and cost per lead, was that relevance. But what we found is then taking that relevance into the nurture system as well. So when we get a lead in, let's say cost, or, homes for sale in Portland, Oregon is the keyword that got them into our funnel. When we're reaching out to these people, our nurture campaigns are based on that keyword. And so we were doing the same thing, where we were making a lot of content on the keywords that we were targeting on Google. But then we would, part of our nurture process is instead of just calling the person up in the first 5 seconds and do you have a home to sell and this, that, and the other thing, it's like, look, they obviously want to buy a house. Let's put this, if they have anything to sell on the back burner for now, let's speak to that homes for sale in Portland, Oregon. And so a lot of our first few nurture steps were, a current market report for Portland, Oregon, the 5 best neighborhoods to live in Portland, Oregon. So we had relevance through the whole process. And that was a big thing that helped us too, is having that relevance through the whole process. And we saw a huge increase in our conversion rate just by doing that.
Yeah, I mean, so there's your other second take-home lesson of the day for anyone listening. It's when someone does a search, you need to take them to a place that gives them exactly what they were searching for, and not just a generic real estate page for the Tri-County area of wherever you are. And then second piece is, obviously, if you get their phone number, you're calling them immediately within 10 seconds. Like, that's a no-brainer. That's your highest chance. But for anyone that doesn't pick up immediately, because we all know that with leads, they say that they want your help, but then they might not be ready for 6 months. You have to have a matching follow-up campaign that specifically relates to what they were originally searching for. And the further off you get from that, the more you deviate, the lower your chance of conversion, and then the higher your costs are to stay in touch with them, and the higher effort it's going to be. So by simply lowering, if I'm hearing you correctly, by making it more relevant, you're lowering the future effort, which also lowers the expense.
Yes. Yeah. And that was kind of our 2-prong, thing of how do we become more profitable as a business, drop our cost and up our conversion rate. Those two things, like that was really all it was. And we didn't need to overcomplicate it. And it was really just the systems to put in place to do those two things at the same time.
Well, we have so much more we could talk about that, but in 2020, so you never wanted to be a realtor. You wanted to be a police officer, and you became a police officer. So, by the way, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
In 2020, you got literally blown up, like movie, like Hollywood style, by a pipe bomb. And I need to kind of hear this story for a second, and I need to know what lessons that taught you, and I want to know how that impacted your life, your career, all of that. Because a lot of us go through things, but I don't know that many of us have been blown up unless we were in the military or, firefighters or policemen.
Yeah. So like I said, I got licensed in 2016. And the reason I got licensed, my wife was in real estate and she was like, hey, you should get your license. I need help and you should have a plan B. I had been a police officer at this point for quite a few years. And I pushed her off for a long time. I kind of resisted. Finally, just took the test, passed it, got my real estate license. And so for a long time in my real estate career, I was doing both. Predominantly, I worked swing shift anyway, so I'd go to work at night, come home, and do real estate stuff during the day, do some lead gen stuff for my wife. But yeah, in 2020, I was on the riot team in Portland, Oregon. And ended up getting blown up by a pipe bomb and suffered a traumatic brain injury, which sounds bad. I don't want to, it's not great, but I was super fortunate. I don't have a ton of long-term side effects from it. But it totally changed the way that I looked at business too, and just life in general, because I probably shouldn't be here today. And so it really changed perspective. And I think that was part of why changing our business was also so important after that happened, because I was like, I don't just want to work to work. Like, we don't know how long we're going to be here. And I was like, I need to enjoy it. So we need to be as efficient as possible to make as much money so we can do the things that we want, because we don't know if tomorrow's even going to happen. So that was one thing that totally changed my perspective. I spent a lot of years, the first part of my life, chasing the dollar. I worked a ton of overtime. I didn't see my kids and stuff a lot. And so that experience really showed me it's even more important to be efficient with your business and be as profitable as possible, because it allows you the ability to have fun, do things, spend the money that you're making, and really enjoy life outside of business.
Well, and at the end of the day, we all have to choose, is this something that we would do for free, just for fun? And if it is, then do it. Be a 0% commission agent and just, you could advertise that and people would come use you, and you could be as busy as you want to without making any money. And maybe your partner is a billionaire and that makes sense for you. But if you're doing real estate and you need it to support your family, or your goals or your hobbies or whatever that might be, you need to be as efficient as possible. So that's efficiency on the lead gen side. But actually, the reason I reached out to you in the first place to be on the show is because I read an article that you published in Inman that was about positioning, and it was about another major misnomer. I feel like you're here to like shatter industry norms, which I kind of love in a subversive way. But you published an article that said if your listing isn't selling, it's not always the price, it's the positioning. And I thought that was fascinating because the one of the number one questions I get from both consumers as well as from realtors is like, what do I do when I've dropped the price and the home still isn't selling? So just kind of want to hear from you, like, walk me through like, what made you write this and a couple of the major takeaways from your article.
Yeah, so a big part of why I wrote this is in the current market, we have stuff sitting longer than ever. And a lot of times what we're seeing is, the typical advice is, well, your price too high. Now, sometimes I totally agree with the fact that, if you drop the price low enough, you can sell anything. I totally agree with that. But once again, going back to an efficiency standpoint and profitability, we shouldn't just look straight to dropping the price to get something sold if we don't understand what's really going on. And I see this play out in two ways. First of all, I see agents just dropping the price and totally shooting their profitability in the foot. And then the next thing I see is they tank their value of their lifetime client because they go to their client and they say, hey, your house isn't selling, so we need to drop the price. And then their clients are upset. We hired you. We thought you were a professional. Now you're just telling us to drop the price. And so it's hurting your long-term lifetime value out of your clients too by the lack of referrals and repeat business. So what we need to do is we need to start teaching agents about positioning. And part of positioning is your price and understanding, yes, price is one of those levers that you can pull, but it's also looking at the market as a whole. When you look at the houses that this house is stacked up against, looking at the photographs, how does yours look compared to those? Looking at, all the other elements that go into that listing compared to the other things around it. And are there ways that you can get more exposure for that house and really highlight it in that specific market to get it sold besides just dropping the price? Because we can all just drop the price. And I face this every day. We see agents all the time that just throw stuff up on the MLS and just say, roll the dice and pray. We're going to throw a sign in the front yard in the MLS. And you're looking at these views and they've got like 200 views in the MLS. And then they go to their sellers and they say, we got to drop the price. It's like you've only had 200 people look at it because, Zillow's not pushing it. Realtors.com is not pushing it. The portals aren't pushing it. They're not helping you. What else are you doing to get eyeballs on it? And so I think really it's understanding that positioning piece of how do I get more eyeballs on my listing? Because when you go to a seller and you say, hey, we might have a pricing issue, but here's the thing. Over the last week, we've got 4,000 eyeballs on this house and it's really got us nothing. Compared to the other homes in the market, this is where we stack up and all these type of stats. They're a lot more willing and a lot more happy to go, yeah, we need to drop the price or we need to pay for staging or something like that. Where if you just go, yeah, we've got 200 views, but we're not getting any action on it, so we need to drop the price, that looks a lot worse. And so, anything you can do to get more eyeballs on it, anything you can do to get it more exposure, those things are going to move the dial so much more. And then you can actually have realistic conversations with your sellers where you look like a professional when it comes to marketing and not just, I'm just the price drop guy.
Well, and I think too, like when you talk about positioning, it's like, who are you positioning the home to and what are you positioning it against to, right? Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like people need a home, unless we're in the vacation home investment market, but like people need a home, and the comparison either becomes the value that they perceive the home will give them, or the price that it will save them money on rent or on in some other situation in their life. And
Yeah.
if one of them is not, if you're not able to move the listing price, what can you do to move the position of that home relative to other homes in the market? It's funny. There's a tool that a lot of agents have been using called, I think it's called like Reimagine Home. It's like one of these AI tools where buyer's agents instead of listing agents can actually use AI to edit the listing photos to, let's say, erase all the bad artwork from the house, erase all the furniture from the house, show the client the vision of what it would look like with new paint, show them what it would look like with new appliances or with new countertops. And it's interesting because I think a lot of people know that exists and will do that. They'll stage like a new listing that's theirs, but very few people are currently staging showings for buyers. And I think
Yeah.
homeowners like kind of think that that's what realtors do because we watched like Property Brothers and Love It or List It back in the day. Like, we're not all hot Canadian, like 8 foot tall dudes, but like at the end of the day, like consumers thought that that was a service they would get from realtors. And that never really came true. That was kind of like a made up thing. Um,
Yeah.
and so I think you have to look at how you can position the home in a better light or interview the clients, find out what their future housing goals are, and then say, could I make this home into that? And what would it cost? Like, what
Yeah.
would, if it's a, let's just call it a $400,000 house for national average purposes. On a $400,000 house, what is the average renovation budget that a buyer might have? Is it 10 grand? What would 10 grand do to a 400K house in your market? What would 20 grand do? What about
Yeah.
40? What about 50? And then the buyers can just choose, do they want to spend that money on a list price and finance it all at 3.5% down or 20% down? Or do they want to buy something lower, use the cash that they have for the renovations to do exactly how they want? And could they get the same result that way? I think we're
Yeah.
like, especially with the power of AI tools right now, I think we're really close to seeing every home showing being staged for every single buyer every time with prices of what the options are. Like when you walk
Yeah.
through a house, it could be like an IKEA catalog. And I think creative realtors have been doing that just verbally forever, those who know the cost of things. But I think now every agent should be integrating that a little bit more into their business.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I think too, I know you guys are all about like tactical things that people can implement straight in their business. And I think the biggest thing with this, if you're going to list a house, identify who the target market is for this house and make them like highlighted in everything that you do. So a lot of times, we've gone to chat GPT for our property descriptions. But when we do that, do you tell chat who your target market is to buy that house? Is your target market a 55 plus person who, is downsizing? Or is it a first time home buyer who, is going to be doing X, Y, and Z? Structuring your listings to really go to those people. Talk to your photographers about, hey, my target demographic for this is going to be this type of person. So I really want to highlight these parts of the homes that will really resonate with those people. And then I think the other big thing about this too, another tactical is really, for exposure. Once you do that, now you've got to drive eyeballs to that listing. And so one of the coolest things that I've seen with markets where stuff is kind of stagnant is doing a broker open and inviting everybody in your market to come, hiring your favorite photographer and videographer, have them there and have them do a video walkthrough with everybody. Every agent that comes to that broker open gets a video walkthrough custom to them so they can voice over, they can do whatever they want. And then they post that on their social media account. Obviously, you got to be MLS compliant, make sure you do everything you need to do on that. But I will tell you, we've been doing that. And it is such a powerful thing when we go to our sellers and say, hey, we did this broker open. First of all, we got 30 agents to come through the open house because let's face it, agents love free social media. And so we got 30 agents to come through and look at your house. And then out of those agents, we normally see about 40% of them that post on their social media that video walkthrough that they got. And then from their post, we got all these other views because we leverage their entire network that's their social media, and we drove more traffic to this. So, those are two tactical steps that I think in this market that are super huge.
It's such an interesting idea because I know that like a lot of like super young agents, not young, but like let's say new agents is better than young or old. But I'll tell a new agent like, hey, contact an existing agent who has a great listing and ask them if you can do a social media day at their place where you can make videos of you can make videos of the house. It helps you, it helps them. But a listing agent could almost use that as ammunition to get the listing in the first place by saying, hey, I'm going to host a social media day at your home. And I'm going to let the top 20 agents with the biggest social media followings in our county come and go hog wild with videos of your home so that we can get as many eyeballs as possible on your property. And that becomes such a powerful marketing tool, but really no one's marketing it in that way, even if they're doing it. And I find that fascinating. But Josh, like everything we've talked about today is so on point for today's market. If someone wanted to get a hold of you to find out more information about how to get their lead costs down, how to get their closing costs down, how to position a listing better, how would they get a hold of you?
Pretty much across the internet. All my social media handles are real estate broker Josh. It's pretty simple. And then, I have a weekly column in Inman Magazine that comes out every Tuesday morning. So you can find me there as well.
Okay, awesome. Josh, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you very much, Matt.